As part of the MaxiTrans team, it is extremely important we all follow appropriate procedures to ensure everyone's safety in the workplace, resulting in everyone going home safely. At a number of our facilities, cranes are used to lift heavy equipment around the site. This poses a high-level risk of serious injury or even death if procedures are not followed correctly. To help us to remember the correct procedure, MaxiTrans has developed the acronym PICTURE. This provides a simple step-by-step process for any crane lift. Plan, isolate, check, test, uplift, return, evaluate. We want you to get the picture. The P in PICTURE stands for plan. When planning for a crane lift, you need to consider the following. Is the crane lift a routine or non-routine lift? Do I have or need a lift plan? Is there a task instruction or standard operating procedure for the lift? Are all personnel familiar with it? Does the lift require an intermediate rigger or dogger to supervise the lift? Do you have all of the necessary equipment ready in position? Stands, chains, lugs, and anything else? An intermediate rigger is a high-risk licensed trained person who is required when undertaking any dual crane lift. A dogger is a high-risk licensed trained person who is required when lifting gear selection is required, there is no lift plan or standard operating procedure in place, the centre of gravity is unknown, or part of the load is outside the visibility of the crane operator. At some sites, an intermediate rigger may be required. Please check with your HSE team. A planning meeting needs to be conducted to ensure personnel involved in the lift understand the following. 1. What risks might be involved in the lift? 2. Are there any additional precautions that may need to be taken? Clearly identify who needs to do what and when, such as the placement and removal of stands. Which communication method is to be used? Verbal, two-way radio, or hand signals? The I in PICTURE stands for isolate. When preparing for a crane lift, you need to make sure that the lift zone is isolated from personnel, ensuring no one is exposed to any potential risk. Isolation includes the placement of a barrier securing the entire lift zone. Or if this is not possible, then spotters must be used to ensure personnel do not enter the lift zone. The C in PICTURE stands for check. Prior to rigging the load, we need to ensure the pre-start checks have been conducted on both the crane and lifting equipment. The MaxiTrans crane pre-start checklist must be completed by the dogger or rigger. This is to make sure that all items on the checklist have been inspected and approved for the lift. The T in PICTURE stands for test. A test lift must be conducted before commencing the actual lift. This will establish that the centre of gravity has been located and appropriate lifting gear is being used and is secure. Finally, this test lift will also ensure that no items become loose or fall during the actual lift. A test lift requires the load to be raised to approximately ankle height. If at any time the load begins to swing, appears unsecure, or items are seen or heard falling, then the load must be lowered immediately and all issues addressed. Once issues have been corrected, the test lift must be repeated to ensure it is now safe to lift. The U in PICTURE stands for uplift. The crane lift can now begin. All people must remain clear of the load and at no point should people be located underneath the load. During the lift, the workers involved in the lift need to ensure that the load does not strike any obstacles and that it remains clear of the crane body. The lifting gear must also be monitored to ensure it remains secure and does not become loose. During the lift, workers will need to be able to identify any potential failures. Stands to be inserted using the insertion tool connected. and at the same time ensuring you do not place yourself underneath the load. The R in picture stands for return. Once the lift is completed, the lifting gear must be inspected and returned to its respective storage area. It is imperative that lifting gear is not dragged across the floor. It must be stored in an appropriate location and in a dry place. The crane hook must be placed as close as possible to its highest point to ensure that it is clear of any obstacles and is not a hazard to other personnel. The E in picture stands for evaluate. Once the crane lift is complete and all lifting gear inspected and returned, the lift must be evaluated. During evaluation, workers must check if any changes are required to the risk assessment, lift plan, rigging techniques, or that any other issue is corrected prior to any further lift being conducted. This will ensure we are actively living our company value and getting better every day in all that we do. So remember picture, P-I-C-T-U-R-E, picture before your next crane lift, and together we can all make sure we go home safely. Get the picture?